communities to follow since we started this work back in 2001. It's pretty straightforward. It starts with simply identifying what you have. Gathering existing information about natural resources in your area provides a foundation for setting priorities for conservation and developing plans, policies, and strategies to manage and protect those resources. And this approach applies whether you're planning at the municipal scale or regional scale or thinking about proposed development on a specific site. There are a number of useful online interactive maps available through DEC that can help facilitate this process. And this is a website where you can find all of them, but today we're going to focus on two of the newest and most relevant tools, I think, for this audience, the Hudson Valley Natural Resource Mapper and DEC Info Locator. So the Natural Resource Mapper was created by the Estuary program with assistance from New York State Information Technology Services staff and released back in 2018. And we are continuing to update it and add new data sets and improve it over time. And the primary purpose of the mapper is to make data available about important habitats and water resources to planners and decision makers in the estuary watershed. And it includes many regional data sets that have been developed by the Estuary program and our partners, as well as some statewide data sets, and is organized thematically for resources related to the estuary, streams and watersheds, wetlands, forests, biodiversity, scenic and recreation resources, and there are also some reference layers. One of the most frequent questions I get about the mapper is how it differs from DEC's Environmental Resource Mapper, which is a tool that's been around for a long time and is widely used by many people in the planning field. And the short answer is that, as I just mentioned, our tool has a limited regional coverage and a focus on planning and includes a lot of data about resources that aren't protected or regulated by the state, but that are still important to consider. And in contrast, the Environmental Resource Mapper has a statewide coverage and shows a more narrow range of features. And it was primarily designed to help users identify whether they're in an area with protected or regulated features that might require a permit. So you should continue to use the Environmental Resource Mapper to help with those questions and contact your regional DEC office if you have additional questions. This is the landing page for the Natural Resource Mapper on the DEC website. From here, you can launch the mapper by clicking here. You can also see in this blue box the recently updated layers or download a fact sheet about the mapper, and that's a helpful resource for printing out and sharing with colleagues or making available to the public. And there is also a webinar recorded, a longer version of this presentation that goes more in depth about the different data layers than I have time to present today. So when you launch the mapper, there's this disclaimer window that pops up. So we just want to note that the mapper is for information and planning purposes, and it includes data from a lot of different sources that were developed at different scales. We can't guarantee the accuracy or completeness of the data shown, so we always recommend verifying information for legal purposes. And again, you should contact the regional DEC office to answer any regulatory questions. There's also a map instruction document available when you click on how to use this map, and that opens up as a PDF. So I'm going to walk you through the basic map layout and functions, and then I'll do a quick live demo as well. And I hope you'll I encourage you to explore the tool further on your own. So this is what it looks like when you open it up, and the first thing I'll point out is this little green arrow in the green bar at the top of the screen where it says DEC. That allows you to enter full screen mode like this. This is especially important if you're looking at the mapper on a laptop or a tablet. So I'm going to repeat that because that may be the most important piece of information I give you today. Without that, oftentimes this information on the left-hand side gets really scrunched and can be inaccessible. So please remember that. The data and tools here are organized in these tabs that are expandable along the left-hand side of the window. There's also zoom tools to manually zoom in and out. There's a selection of base maps available in a pull-down screen up here on the right. One of the most important things to understand is that layers in this map become viewable, and they also turn off at different scales. And that means that you may need to zoom in or out in order to view particular layers of interest. So in general, features that are intended for viewing at a regional scale are going to turn off if you zoom too far in. And other features that are very detailed, for example, the tax parcel layer is only going to turn on when you zoom into the neighborhood scale. So layers that are not viewable at the scale you're looking at are going to appear in italics and kind of grayed out in the legend here on the left. And otherwise, if they are viewable, they'll have black face print like here, and they're not going to be in italics. So this indicates this is a clickable, turn-onable layer. So you can turn layers on individually by clicking on them here. Keep in mind you may need to scroll down within each of these groups to access all of the different data layers that are available. And there is an information button next to each layer in the legend, and that will take you over to a separate window with layer descriptions and information about when the layers were published and by whom, links for more information, and a link to download the GIS data if it's available and if you're a GIS mapping user. Okay, so I'm going to try doing another screen share and switch over to my web browser, which you should now be seeing. And if you're not, please pipe up, but hopefully this is working. So I'm over in Chrome looking at the mapper, and this is the home extent. Again, I'm going to expand to full screen, and from here you can manually zoom in with these buttons like that, or with using your mouse to scroll in. You can also hold down the shift button and click and drag out a rectangle to zoom into an area of interest. Or you can use this search function in the left-hand top part of the screen. So I'm going to zoom in to Nori Point, and I'm just going to search it like that. And you have to click on one of the responses, and this isn't very intuitive here. It doesn't actually pull up the address, but it works. And it recognizes this as a place, and that red dot is indicating the location of that address. So you can clear it to get rid of that red dot. So from here, I'll show you how to use the base maps. And the one that I most frequently use are the New York State aerials. I'll turn that on. Here you can see the Nori Point Environmental Education Center, which is a really lovely place to visit on the river. And this is showing the most recent ortho imagery available from New York State, or air photos. Very detailed. And so from next, I'll point out that there are a number of reference layers at the bottom of the stack of layers on the left. So including the municipal boundaries and the tax parcels. I'm going to turn on the town layer and New York protected areas, which is showing parks, preserves, and publicly owned land. And I'll point out that you can click on the map, and most of these features, if they're shown on the map, have these pop-up windows that'll appear when you click on the feature, and it'll tell you more about it. So this happens to be the Margaret Lewis Norrie State Park. And if there's more than one feature turned on that overlaps, you have to be aware that there's this tiny little green arrow to click through and find the information about the other layer. And the other overlapping layer, of course, was the Town of Hyde Park municipal boundary. So I'll close out of that. And next, I'll show you some of the tools that are available here. There is a little tiny icon here that looks like a measuring stick for the measure tools. You have to click on that, and then you can click to measure an area or a distance. So I'll click distance, and you can change the units. I'm going to change it over to feet. And just as an example, click on the map 1 point, double click to close it, and I'll click the length of that pier at the education center, and it's about 81 feet. So you can measure, like you can measure the area of this parking lot or, so forth. Very important to note, you need to get out of this tool if you want to be able to click on the map later on and open up those pop-up windows. So make sure to close the measure tool when you're done. That's very important. Just click on that icon again and it'll close it up. Next, I'll just show you, you can print a map using this tool. This is the print map function, and I'll give it a name, Marie Point. Just note that the maps don't produce legends, unfortunately, but you can hopefully give it a descriptive title and select your template. It'll create either a PDF or a JPEG image, and make sure to disable your pop-up windows as you're going through this. Might take a minute, and then on my screen it usually opens up as a separate tab, and I could download it or send it to my printer. So I'm seeing I saw looked like there was a question popping up in the chat box. Martin, feel free to interrupt me as I'm going along, and if there are any relevant questions I can help answer. So I think that's all I was going to share quickly with this demo, and I'll move back over to my PowerPoint.
There were just two questions, Ingrid. One was, where is the town boundary? And you're zoomed in too close to see it, but if you zoom out, you can see it.
That's right.
The next question is, can you view the map on the screen before you print it? And I think you just demonstrated that you can.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm going to try to get back into, and you're seeing my presentation again?
Yeah, seeing the presentation again. New question just came in. It says, are you able to export layers as shapefiles?
No, but the info page will link to the GIS data download. For most of the data in the mapper can be downloaded. So if you have GIS software, you could go and get it yourself.
Also, it comes from the clearinghouse?
Yes.
Used to populate these maps?
No, it's these maps are being streamed by DEC, and unfortunately, for those who have more advanced GIS capability, there's no way to share these map services at this point, is my understanding. But you can download the data either from the GIS clearinghouse, or in some cases they're hosted by our partners, like by the New York Natural Heritage Program.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll move along and just I'm going to highlight a couple of the different sources of information in the map. I won't have time to talk about all 40 data sets, but that's okay. The first group of layers, as I mentioned, is the estuary layers, and these cover the really significant habitat resources in the Hudson River estuary. And I'll point out this one particular layer, the migratory fish runs, which shows stream reaches that provide important habitat for fish traveling between ocean and freshwater habitats in New York, such as river herring, striped bass, and sturgeon. And so this is showing a part of the town of East Greenbush. This is the Kill stream, and if you click on the stream, it'll pull up that pop-up window, which will tell you what species have been documented here. There are 3 migratory species in the lower Kill, including American eels, which are migrating into our streams right around now at this time of the year. Our staff have been busy trying to monitor this migration, and if you zoom out to the watershed level, you'll see that these dotted lines go deep into the headwaters, and that's because American eel indeed can travel quite far upstream into some of our tributaries. There are a number of layers related to water resources available in the streams and watersheds group of layers, and many of these have statewide coverage. So if anybody's listening from other parts of New York outside of the estuary watershed, this group in particular will be useful for you. So I'll show here, again, this is the town of East Greenbush, and I've turned on watershed boundaries, which are in blue, and the DEC stream classifications are shown in purple. And these reflect the best uses that water bodies should support and are the basis for programs to protect New York State waters. So be mindful that streams are broken up into many different small segments. So if you click on this highlighted section here, the lower branch of the Mill Creek in East Greenbush is a Class C stream. But just a little bit upstream of that, it becomes Class C with a TS, or trout spawning standard, which is a protected stream. And you can also turn on the priority water bodies list, which overlaps with that layer and links to online reports that summarize general water quality conditions and the degree to which a water body is meeting its best designated uses. The stream, the Mill Creek, you can see that the report is for the entire stream and its tributaries, and fortunately has no known impacts according to the priority water body list. But if there were, they would be outlined here along with information about any documented pollutants, sources, and efforts taken to resolve the issues. Stream health is very closely tied to the condition of adjacent stream buffer areas. And one of the data sets I think is particularly valuable for planners to be aware of are these riparian areas, which were originally mapped by the New York Natural Heritage Program about a year ago to support stream buffer restoration efforts for DEC's Trees for Tribs program. But they highlight the most critical areas influencing stream health and dynamics. And I think that they're useful to keep in mind if you're looking at projects that are occurring near streams.
Ingrid, we had a question that the tax parcels layer was unavailable. Is that something that's going to be incorporated in, or is it an error, or is it, what's the
Yeah, that's, ITS is working on that today. I noticed that, occasionally these issues come up, and so people can always email me if they notice something seems wrong, and I'll look into it and help you troubleshoot. But that layer does seem to be unavailable at the moment, and they're looking into it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So we also provide FEMA's flood hazard zones in the map, and these are streamed directly from FEMA. Note that we don't have data for Columbia and Rensselaer counties at this time because they're still waiting to have digital mapping completed. Moving along, we have a couple of data sets related to wetlands, which are really critical habitats and also provide important water quality and flood control benefits. As you're probably aware, our existing wetland maps tend to have inaccuracies and don't map all of the wetlands that are out there on the landscape. And there's really no substitute for doing a site visit or having a professional delineation, but these nevertheless provide a good starting point for recognizing where wetlands may occur. So here we're looking at the town of Post-and-Kill in Rensselaer County again, and these are DEC's state-regulated freshwater wetlands, which primarily show wetlands greater than 12.4 acres, with a few exceptions. The map also shows the check zone around these wetlands, which recognizing that there's some inaccuracy in the mapping. DEC regulates activities in addition in a 100-foot adjacent area to the wetland, and typically a delineation is needed to determine exactly where those boundaries lie. So now I've turned on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's National Wetland Inventory on top of the DEC wetlands, and you can see that this is a much more comprehensive map of wetlands of all sizes and shows many more wetlands on the landscape. It includes some information about habitat, showing whether it's a forested wetland or an emergent wetland like a marsh. But this map also has some inaccuracies and is missing wetlands that are out there. So in addition, we provide wetland soils. This is information from county soil surveys about soil drainage classification and can be a helpful indicator of where you might expect to find some additional wetlands out there. So I'm excited to share some new forest data that we have available for the Hudson Valley. And of course, forests provide numerous important benefits for our communities, ranging from wildlife habitat to clean water, flood control, climate moderation, and forest products. And forests are abundant in our region, but in many places they've been fragmented or divided from large forest patches into smaller blocks that no longer provide the same habitat value to many birds and other types of wildlife that rely on intact core forest areas that are isolated from human disturbance. Last year, we partnered with the New York Natural Heritage Program to develop a new data set. It was an update to an earlier data set describing large forests. And in this case, we went a step further and developed what we're calling the Forest Condition Index, which identifies forest patches that are at least 100 acres large and their interior or core forest areas that are at least 100 meters from a forest edge. And the index also estimates the condition of each forest relative to other forests in the region based on a variety of data related to size, fragmentation, habitat connectivity, stressors, habitat values, and carbon sequestration value. The data are now available for viewing in the Natural Resource Mapper, and here I'm showing an area south of Albany in the Capital District. And we actually held a full-length webinar about this data set yesterday on our own webinar series, the Conservation and Land Use 101 series. That'll be posted to the DEC website hopefully by tomorrow, so you could go back to that recording. And if you're interested in catching future webinars we have, contact me and I can add you to our list. So you can click on these forest patches and pull up more information about the relative condition or importance of a particular forest, including notable rankings. So I've selected a forest here that's on the Rensselaer Plateau in eastern Rensselaer County that happens to rank in the top 1% of Hudson Valley forests based on size and intact unfragmented condition. So this is an interesting way of exploring your local forests and seeing how they compare with other forests across the region. You can also... Yep.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to pick my spots here.
Sure.
We had a couple questions about soils. Do they illustrate all soils or just hydric soils?
So we showed the soils are based on the natural soil drainage condition class in the county soil surveys, but there's also a field when you click on that pop-up box, and it'll tell you whether the soil was classified as hydric or not.
Okay. And then we had one more question. How do conservation easements get added to this data set?
So I pointed out the protected areas database in the reference layers, and that includes some conservation easements. It was last updated in 2018, and the easement data in there is probably going back a few years before that, maybe to 2015 or 16. And not all land trusts share their easement data, so it's patchy. It depends where you are in the region, how good that data layer is. But I will say that there's a new project that's hopefully going to start and be on track this year with the Heritage Program and some of the region's land trusts to update the New York Protected Areas database and get a better coverage of all of the lands that are protected in some form.
Okay.
And that would hopefully going forward be updated on a regular basis.
Okay. And then we had one more question. I'm just going to read it as is. Maybe it's, can you define matrix, core, and forests?
Yes, I was just about to get to that.
Okay.
So I'm showing the core forest here, and this was based on a fragmentation analysis of the forest patches identified in the index. So the index takes anything that was classified as forest in the National Land Cover Database, and we erased all roads and railroads from that data to reflect fragmentation that's there. And then we removed any forests that were less than 100 acres. We only focused on forests larger than 100 acres. And of those, we ran this analysis that identified core forest, which are areas that are at least 100 meters, a little over 300 feet from the edge of a forest. And that's what's shown in this overlay kind of with the striped hatches here. And that's supposedly, higher quality forest that's more isolated from disturbance. And especially if you have a core forest that's at least 500 acres in size, according to ecological literature, that would be, pretty good wildlife habitat. That's kind of considered like a threshold where it's more likely to support those interior forest habitat values. So moving along, these are the matrix forests and linkage zones, which are like forest corridors. And these were mapped by the Nature Conservancy and the New York Natural Heritage Program at a statewide level. And they're considered to be the largest, most intact forests in the state, or in the northeastern United States, in fact, that are large enough to support important ecological processes and to recover from large disturbances like hurricanes and ice storms or fires, and be a source of wildlife populations into surrounding areas. So this is showing that that forest I chose earlier is part of the Rensselaer Plateau Matrix Forest Block. So the last group I'll discuss are the biodiversity layers, and biodiversity refers to the diversity of life in all forms, from genes to species to habitats or ecosystems. And it's important to note that all of the resources I've talked about so far have importance for biodiversity, but the layers in this group reflect in particular areas that have been documented by biologists as supporting high quality or rare natural communities, or populations of rare plants and animals in New York State, such as the endangered northern cricket frog shown here. So this is another data set that was updated pretty recently by the New York Natural Heritage Program through a partnership with our program. We updated it about a year ago, and these data are based on habitat modeling for known locations of rare animals and rare plants, and represent the areas necessary to maintain a population of those species, including the habitats that they use, as well as adjacent areas that impact the quality of those habitats. So you could think of like that northern cricket frog might live in a wetland. Well, it might move around to some upland areas around that wetland during different parts of the year, and then a buffer area around those places that would influence the quality of those habitats it uses. And so in addition, the data, part of this update is that we broke down the important areas for rare animals into some different habitat types, including aquatic, wetland, and terrestrial animal habitats. And also we broke out the foraging areas for rare bats. And as many of you may be aware, those foraging areas for northern long-eared bat and Indiana bat can cover really large areas. This is shown in the gray overlay I just turned on. So this helps provide some more information about what's been mapped. Communities can request more information about the important areas for conservation planning purposes from the Heritage Program, or you can contact me for more information as well. So there's a lot more I could say about all these different information sources than we have time for today, but I hope you'll explore the tool further on your own. And returning to this planning framework I mentioned at the beginning, I'd like to finish out with some examples of how the mapper can be used. So first, we hope you'll use the mapper as a planning reference as you're looking at proposed development projects, and in particular as a preliminary screening tool to help identify potential resources of conservation concern on or near a site, and to understand the overall context environmentally of a project. And ideally this would happen very early in the planning process, preferably perhaps in preparation for a pre-application or pre-conference meeting with the project sponsor, so that potential areas of concern could then be incorporated or influence the project design. And of course, you should always conduct site visits to verify features and identify other things that might not show up on the maps. Our program has also been working with numerous communities to develop natural resources inventories, or NRIs, including this one from the town of East Greenbush, which actually got an award from CDRPC earlier this year. And an NRI is basically a compilation of existing information about natural resources in an area. And the mapper can help inform what information you decide to include in an NRI, which of course goes further to provide interpretation and analysis of that and description customized to the municipality. And the mapper could also be a companion tool to be able to query and use that data more interactively. And for communities taking the next step towards prioritizing resources through a comprehensive plan update or zoning update or an open space plan, The mapper can similarly be a companion tool to help identify where priority resources occur and overlap with one another. And this is an example of a priority open space map from the town of Blooming Grove's open space inventory. That's a town down in Orange County. So thanks a lot for your attention. I hope I've left enough time for Kathy to present the DEC info locator. I don't know if there's any other questions now, or we should switch over and
We haven't gotten any others in the chat, but if we do get some, I'll refer them your way. Folks, just a reminder, we do archive these on our website, and we will post a link to the recording on our YouTube channel. If you like and subscribe, then you'll get notified when we post new videos and opportunities for other sessions that we present as far as the series goes. So please don't forget to do that.
Thanks. Feel free to follow up. This is my contact information. And again, if you run into any questions or issues with using the mapper, I'm happy to help sort those out. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. So excited to be here and to be able to bring you some information about DEC Info Locator. My name is Kathy Kittle, and I'm the Bureau Director for the Web and Digital Services Group at DEC in the Office of Communication Services. And my role is to manage our public website, our social media, our electronic newsletters, and DEC Info Locator is a relatively new project. I gave a preliminary presentation with Ingrid actually around this time last year, and we hadn't gone live yet. So this was something that I was really excited about and wanted to show you how far we've come. So our project goal was really to make a user-friendly map to really allow the public to have access to DEC documents and information about the environmental quality of specific sites. So think of streams and lakes and lands and air quality in certain areas, environmental cleanup sites, etc. And then we expanded it to include outdoor recreational opportunities because DEC is actually one of 5 super agencies in the country where we bring our environmental quality and our natural resources departments together in one agency so that we really look at how does the environmental quality of an area actually support the natural resource. So our goal is to increase transparency and then provide access to the public to the documents and the data that DEC has. We are a rather large agency. We're also a very complex agency, and finding information on our public website is challenging. I manage a website, so I can say that. We have one map and really 2 views. And the map is set up very similar to Ingrid's map. At DEC, we use a ArcGIS online product, and we've modeled our maps in very similar ways so that the usability between the maps on our website is familiar to the public and other users. So we have the environmental quality side of our agency as well as the outdoor activity side. In terms of environmental quality, we also have an accordion style categories listing. So we have permits and registrations, environmental cleanup, environmental monitoring, public involvement, environmentally sensitive area, and legal. You have the ability to check all of them in a certain grouping as well as get some information on the data layers. And if that category, such as permits and registrations, which has more than 20 data layers, if it's rather long, you will get that scroll bar that Ingrid showed you before. Outdoor activities is set up very similar, where we have a smaller grouping of categories, but they're in land-related, campgrounds, trails, and then water-related. So we have about 20, we've actually added 2 more for the permits and registrations. Very excited about that. Environmental cleanup, those are our environmental cleanup sites, the brownfields, the Superfund sites, etc. Environmental monitoring, I'm really excited. We're going to be adding a new data layer actually on Friday using harmful algal blooms. So I'm really excited that that's going to be incorporated into DEC Info Locator. Public involvement, these categories really tend towards climate smart communities and environmental justice areas, etc. Environmentally sensitive areas, our mapper is not to the level of detail that Ingrid's is. Her mapper gives you such beautiful detail on the actual critical environmental areas, the soils, the forests, etc. This is much at a broader level. And then legal information, because everybody wants to know the consent orders, the bad actors, as well as hearings that we've had. In terms of outdoor activities, we have 15 land-related activities. I know there was a question about conservation easements, and they are included in the DEC info locator. We have more than 70 conservation easements mapped across the state, as well as more than 1,200 state lands that are mapped as well. Campgrounds, I'm going to show you a really cool functionality that we have for campgrounds. Trails where you can turn on mountain biking trails or horseback riding trails or hiking trails. And then water related activities. And that's everything from your shell fishing to your boat access to fishing, etc. So in terms of core functionality, again, it's very similar to Ingrid's. We have a little bit different piece with an active layers window, which I'm going to show you. The zoom in button, the zoom out button. The home button is great because I love to be able to get back to where I started. Active layers window, I'm going to show you that, and that's very helpful, especially since we have more than 65 data layers, being able to see what you have open on the map, because you'll start to see it looks like Skittles threw up. There's different colors, there's they're all the same shape, but there's different icons for each different data layer. And then the reset button. If you're like our commissioner, you turn on so many data layers, you want to get back to start, you just hit that reset button and you get to a clean map. So we have the map choices very similar to Ingrid's. Our help section has a link back to our webpage about DEC Info Locator, a little video about getting started, the terms and conditions, because again, it's not for legal information, but we do provide the information as accurate as we know it is. What's beautiful about this is that we've gotten a lot of feedback from the public. Either A, you're missing some data information, and then that allows us to go and fix that data, or B, did you know this dry cleaner was down the corner and you don't know about it? It's been very helpful for us. And then we have a contact us where we have a Dropbox where people can actually suggest new data layers we might want to include in the DEC Info Locator map, as well as provide any feedback if they see any data errors.
So Kathy, that link above,
yeah, go ahead.
If folks want to suggest that they have shape files or layers that they want the department to consider in the maps, is that contact us from the DEC Info Locator the best way to do it?
Yes, it is. And I'll share our Dropbox at the end, but it's basically DEC Info Locator at dec.ny.gov. But absolutely, our contact us is great.
Okay.
So the active layers window, you see lots of icons on this. You may not know what the icons mean. When you click on that, you get that active layers floating box. You can size it any way you want. And this is actually one way where you can get a printable legend, especially if you have a lot of icons and layers activated on your map. You can actually see which ones you have along with the icon and the title of the data layer. And then if you remove one from the left-hand legend, it will be removed from your active layers window. So we find that's really helpful for people, especially when they're selecting data layers from several different categories. They are all color-coded so that all the permits and registrations icons are brown. The environmental cleanups are all orange. The environmental monitoring are a light turquoise. Public involvement are purple. And then the legal information is black. And then all of our outdoor activities are green. So the color coding does help a little bit to distinguish between the different icons, but we actually hand draw and create each of the icons so that they are distinct to the data layer. When we spoke with Estuary, they said don't go from out of the box because you're going to have circles and squares and triangles and just too many colors. You're looking at so many data layers. It would be good if you create your own icons. So that's what we do. So you start again by either searching. I find that's the best way to do it, or you can zoom and our layers will be grayed out. The data layer names will be grayed out until you actually zoom into activate. We also added this little pop-up box, zoom in to activate layer, because when we went live with our mapper, everybody said it's broken, it's not working, because they would click on, say, air state facilities, and nothing would happen to the map because the extent doesn't show up until you really zoom in more. So we put that little alert box, and that's really cut down on the people saying that our map is broken. So you can certainly zoom in. What you can see here on the screen, once you do zoom in a little bit, you can see the name of the data layer, air state facility, has turned black, and the little alert box has gone away, and you'll see the icons actually here on the screen. So a couple ways you can zoom. You can actually zoom in using your scroll bar, your mouse pad, or the plus and minus in the tools. So the other way to search is using the search feature in the left-hand legend. You can search by address, municipalities, place names, or counties. This is out of the box from Esri, so if you put in Orange County, California may come up. They have not been able to really just delineate New York as one of the options yet. That's one of the features that we're trying to get our team to be able to zero that in on. But make sure you pick New York locations. So we have icon boxes just like Ingrid does, and we have links to information. So here we have a mine. It's a permitted reclaimed mine. The pop-up box gives you some basic information, the mine name, where it's located, the commodity. This is a limestone mine. When you click on the link, what's nice is that you actually go to that record in our database so that you do not have to query our database. We have it available elsewhere on our website, but it is very challenging to find and a little bit more challenging to use. So right from the map, you can actually get to it, and then you can look at the permit, you can look at lots of information about it. You can go right to the registry. The other thing you can do is you can actually link to the document. So here's a Title V air facility. Title V facilities actually emit large amounts of pollutants, and they're strictly regulated. In the pop-up box, we give you by permit what they are allowed to emit in a given year. So you have the VOCs and the nitrogen oxides, the carbon dioxide, etc. So you have that information right in the pop-up, but then you have a link there to, say, the permit, the review report, and the some past information. And you can actually open the permit right there and not worry about filing a FOIL request. We find it's very intuitive. Most people are able to use the map much more easily in order to get that document. Similarly, some facilities, especially Ravenna Cement Plant in our Region 4 region, they might have several permits from DEC. So they might have an air facility permit, their Title V facility. They might have a speedies permit, but they might have a waste management permit, etc. So if there's one of many records, you'll have that little arrow that you can scroll through. And again, you can get some information here. If you go to the next record, you'll see this is the link to the wastewater facilities permit, the speedies permit that they have. And when you click on that, if a facility has multiple documents associated with it, so say it was a cleanup site, here you actually are brought to an actual file folder where all the records for that particular facility's cleanup are housed. So this is a DER site, not the Ravenna, but a different site. This is in Hoosick Falls. And you can see there are probably 20 documents in this folder, and you can download all of them and be able to use them at your leisure. So the tools that we have the area measure that Ingrid had shown before, the distance measure. One I'm going to show you is the Nearby Me feature, because I find that so valuable for the general public, but also somebody maybe who's really trying to zero in on a particular region. You would select the tool. It's the little arrow in the toolbar there. You can select the radius in miles, and we go from 1 mile up to 10. Once you do that, you can actually click on the map to set your circle, and that will show you all the icons within that particular circle from the data sets that you chose. When you can then next expand the layer listing. So here in my screenshot, you see municipal separate storm sewer systems, commonly known as MS4, the MS4 extended, and say the multi-sector general permits. When I expand that, you can actually see the names of the facilities that are listed. So here I expanded the MS4 extended, the multi-sector permits, the MSGPs, and maybe I'm interested in the Syracuse Teal Avenue plant. When I click on that, I can go right to that icon, the pop-up window shows up, and then I can get my information and be able to click on it. When
Kathy,
I print,
if I could, a very technical question regarding the CO2
yeah.
that you mentioned. Is that a CO2 or a CO2 equivalent?
It's carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. I can't tell you which one it is, but I'll look at the Title V permit, or if you reach me afterwards, I can tell you exactly what that is.
Okay, and your contact will be at the end of the presentation.
Yes. Yes.
If folks have a question about CO2 and CO2 equivalent, be sure to email Kathy and she can point you in the right direction.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Great. So so you can actually print your list, which I love, because if you're interested in, say, there's 20 different icons in your nearby me circle, you can actually print your list and be able to have that to refer to later on. Switching sides to the other side of our house is the outdoor activities. Maybe you're planners, but you're also outdoor recreationalists at heart, hopefully. Here you can click on DEC lands, conservation easements, etc. When you get the pop-up box, it gives you some information there, and then again a link that will bring you to the web page that describes all the different activities that are allowed on that property. It gives you maps. It gives you the ability to get more information about that particular state property. Campgrounds, I love this feature because it doesn't exist anywhere else, and if you're like me and you love to camp, you want to see what your campsite looks like. So when we activate our campground layer, you can see the campgrounds, but you need to zoom in a little bit further to get the actual campsites. So once you zoom in, you can pick an actual campsite, and if an image is available in our repository, you can actually see what the picture looks like in the pop-up box. And then you can click on that to actually get a full view. I like this site. It looks really good. It's got nice trees. It's nice level land. I think I'll pick that site. One of the things that we're also going to be rolling out probably next week or the week after is some of our campsites, we have multiple images that show you the different angles of the campsites. And there will actually be a carousel of, I think, 2 or 3 pictures in the pop-up box. And that will allow you to see the multiple views of that particular property. I think the real benefit of DEC Info Locator, beyond getting the documents right then and there in the comfort of your home, as we all are now, is actually bringing both sides of the agency together. And here, if I am going boating, so here I picked Oneida Lake, and I can get some information about the boat launch there. I can click on any public fishing rights to see the fish that would be available that are in that lake that have been identified there. But I can also check the water quality of that lake. So I can see the fact sheet for that particular lake, download it if I want to, see if there's any impacts. Once HABs gets incorporated into the DEC Info Locator this coming weekend, you'll be able to know, hey, this boat launch, do I have any HABs around this area that I may want to be concerned about? And again, it's bringing both the environmental quality side and the outdoor activity side together in one area of the map. So we have a web page. When you click on the, I had some people couldn't find it. I said, how can you not find it on this big green box? You click on that link and that will open up the mapper in a new window. One of the other things that we have found extremely valuable is this feedback survey. We've gotten probably about 150 people that have taken the survey so far, and that's how we knew that people were having trouble making the layers active because they didn't zoom in enough. They told us, you know, it wasn't working. They have recommended new data layers. They have also, you know, thanked us and shown us how maybe they have reduced their FOIA requests and been able to get information in a much more timely manner than if they had to go through the regular channels of getting some of this information. The other thing we have is a layer listing, and the layer listing will show you by category, all the data layers that we have. It'll give you the icon. If there's more information about that particular topic, such as Title V program, there will be a link in the description. I think most importantly are the last two columns. The column will tell you, one, what you will actually get from that data layer. So you can expect to get a permit and a permit review report. That is available through all of those icons for Title V's. But lastly, it tells you how often that data is updated. And some of our data layers actually get updated every single night. The air facilities, the state facilities, as well as the Title V permits, those all get updated every single night. So if there's a new facility or new permit modification, that gets auto-generated. Same thing with our cleanup sites, our the environmental brownfields, the Superfund sites, the voluntary cleanup programs. Any new documents that are tied to those particular cleanup sites, the work plans, the cleanup plans, those go out every single night, and you're always getting the freshest information. Some of the information gets updated annually, some on a quarterly basis. So really check that. One of the things that we're planning to add is actually like a last fresh date, and that will tell you when it was last updated, so that you will know, hey, it's due for another quarterly update. And if it's not there, then you can email me and I will get right on that program. So some upcoming enhancements, we're always looking to add more data layers. We recently, some of our more recent ones were a hunting layer, active landfills, HABs are coming this Friday, etc. So if you have a suggestion, feel free to send it to us. I am looking to optimize it more for mobile. It will certainly work well on a laptop and a tablet and a desktop. It works on a phone, but it's very tight. So if you're trying to access it on the phone, you're probably not going to download a big air permit that's 300 pages on your phone. But you may want some of the trail information on your phone. So we're really looking to optimize it. It will work. It's just not the best experience that I would like for people. And this is a question I get most of the time, are the data sets downloadable? Not yet, but I'm going to give you some exciting news. So we do have many of the data sets available through the Open NY data portal, and that's data.ny.gov. Also the New York State Clearinghouse, that's managed on a state level for all GIS data layers. My goal is to try to make whatever data layers we have available in both of those platforms. One of the things that we are looking at are web services, and to be able to provide those to users so they can incorporate those into their maps. Much more efficient than having to worry about, hey, was this data layer less updated? Is it a year old? Is it 2 years old? I don't know. We're actually bringing in the HABs information through a web service that our Division of Water actually has a separate HABs mapper. So we're bringing that in. And one of the goals we're looking to do for municipalities is to provide some of these web services going out. Many municipalities may not have extensive GIS experience within their agencies, so we want to try to make those available. And we're working with our ITS, Information Technology Services Agency, their GIS specialty group, to try to make some of those available soon. So stay tuned. Hopefully it'll be sooner than I want. Here's my information, and Scott Donnelly is my partner in this project. We have worked with more than 15 different divisions in our agency, as well as some of our regional offices, to bring DEC Infolocator to life and to make it as responsive as possible to the information that most of the public is looking for. Now, it will not replace all the mappers that we have. Ingrid's mapper is amazing. It is the proper, amazing tool for planners, for people who really need that detailed information about ecosystems and how they interact and what's available in terms of boundaries, etc. So we will never take those mappers away. This mapper is really to provide the access to the data and to the documents that the people are looking for, while also providing some of that geographic information. So there will be other mappers that will stay. Some of the DEC mappers, they're old and they're going to be going away. Environmental Facilities Navigator is one that is going away because quite honestly, everything that's in there is in our mapper and more. So there's no reason to keep that separate mapper. But different tools for different uses. So that's our website down below. It's our short bit.ly, but you can also get to the DEC info locator at dec.ny.gov, and it's a link on our homepage under popular links. Feel free to go check it out. Make sure you take the feedback survey and tell us what you think. And if you do have more data layers that you'd like to recommend, feel free to do that through our Contact Us. Any questions?
We're just monitoring the chat box to see if we have any questions come in.
Okay.
I got to realize to take my microphone off mute. So I think we're able to get to all the questions. I do want to remind our panelists I do want to thank our panelists very much for their time. And I do want to remind our attendees that for those of you that registered and put in an email address, we do provide an email that's automatically generated to all of our attendees that you can take to your municipalities to submit for credit if you're looking for credit for a planning and zoning board member. And then we have submitted this for AICP credit, so that should be available from the American Planning Association in short order. We will archive the presentations at cdrpc.org. So please, if you'd like to come back and check those out or view a video of today's presentation, you can certainly do that right from our website. And the video is linked on there as well to our YouTube channel. We're getting a lot of great compliments to our presenters. I do want to thank you guys so much for your time and sharing this knowledge with us. I'm sure people will be able to explore these maps and be able to hit you with more questions. So with that, I'll close the session. Again, folks, cdrpc.org for information on our webinar series. And we do have, I'm gonna go to regular view share. Thank you. We do have a series of presentations every Thursday at 10 or 10:30. And then I'm gonna turn my camera on. And then next week's presentation, we'll have a session on planning law. So emerging case law as it relates to planning and zoning, which will be very engaging. So I encourage people to sign up. So with that, I'll close out the webinar. And thank you so much to our panelists. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.